Hey, what's up everyone and welcome to Daily Code Buffer. In this video we are going to see basic commands of Kubernetes, or we can say kubectl. So let's get started. So in the previous videos we saw that our smallest deployable component in Kubernetes is a pod. So we containerize our application into a containers and we have an abstract layer for that is a pod. So we deploy a single pod for a particular nodes. But when we are actually implementing in an application, we abstract that pods into a deployment. So we will be deploying a deployments, and that deployments will be containing a different pods and a different containers for that particular pods. So let's see all those different commands in action. So I've installed Docker, Kubernetes, kubectl and minikube in my local machine. I have created video for that also. You can check this out over here and I'll add the link in the description below as well. So once you go through that video like how to install minikube and kubectl in your local machine, we can start from here. So let's go to the terminal. So the basic command in Kubernetes, I may say Kubernetes or kubectl, but both are the same. Okay, kubectl is a Kubernetes controller. So the basic command is get the services or get the components which are already there in the Kubernetes. So what are the pods, replica set, deployment, services, nodes. So these are all the components that are available in our Kubernetes cluster. So we can get the details of all those components. So to get those component details, we can use the command kubectl get. If you want pods, we can use pod command over here and we hit enter. You can see that there is no resources, there is no pods available. So I'm getting no resources found in the default namespace. Similarly, we can get kubectl get deployment. There is no deployment available. Kubectl get service we can do. You can see that there is a default service available. Okay, Kubernetes service. So this way we can use get command to get all the different components available in the Kubernetes. Now let's see how to deploy a deployment or how to create a deployment. Okay, and before that, to learn all the different commands, we can use the help command over here. So you can use kubectl. If you do -h over here, then you will get the help command for this kubectl and you can learn this way. So you can see that you're getting all the commands or all the help related to kubectl command. You can see that you can create, expose, run, set, explain. These are all the different commands you can use. Suppose if you want to use create, then you can use kubectl create. But if you don't know what are the different commands or different options available for create, you can use -h to know more about that. Okay, you can see that in kubectl create, either you can give JSON or YAML file and these are the different values available. Okay, you can create job, namespace, role, secret, deployments and everything. So I told you, right, generally we'll be wrapping around the deployment for all the pods that we create. So we'll be creating a deployments. Now let's create a deployment. So to create a deployment, the command is kubectl create, what we see, and we also saw that we have to mention deployment. So I'll mention deployment, and after this deployment we have to mention the name. Suppose I'm taking the example of the Nginx server. There is an Nginx image available in the Docker hub, Docker registry, so you can check that out as well. So I'm using that Nginx image over here to deploy the Nginx server. So I need to define the deployment name. So I'm using the deployment name as Nginx server. So this is my deployment name over here, and then I have to define the image. So I'll define the image equals to the image name. So suppose my image name is Nginx. I have defined over here, and once I hit enter, my deployment will be created. You can see that deployment is created. Now if we see the deployment, kubectl get deployment, you can see that deployment is created. So generally when we hit this command create deployment, what it will do is whatever image we have defined over here, it will check in the system if image is available or not. If not, it will fetch the image from the registry. In case we are using the Docker registry, so it will fetch that image from the Docker registry and it will try to build using the deployment. So you can see that we have a deployment created. You can see that we will be having a pod also created. So if we see kubectl get pod, you can see that pod also is created. One more component will be created, that is a replica set. That replica set will contain how many replicas are available for that pod for our deployment. So if you see kubectl get replica set, you can see that current one replica is there, and desired one is there, and ready one is there. So whatever I gave over here, right, in the deployment, my name was Nginx server. So after that Nginx server, when we created the Nginx deployment, the first thing created was a replica set. So you can see that Nginx server and one ID was appended to that, and replica set was created. In that replica set we define, okay, I want one replica, and Kubernetes will be smart enough to create that one replica for us. And after replica set is created, the pod will be created. So how many replicas that we defined in the replica sets, in the replicas that we want, accordingly pods will be created. So first deployment is created, then replica sets are defined, and based on the replica sets, how many replicas we want, pods are created. Now if you want to see what all the different steps happened for that deployment, then we can describe the result as well. So to do that, we can do kubectl describe deployment, and we need to give the deployment name. So the deployment name is nginx server. So if we give nginx server over here, you can see that the complete description of the deployment is over here. So you can see that what is the namespace, what is the name, what is the namespace when it was created, what are the different labels available, all those informations are available for the deployment. Similarly, we can get for the pods as well. So if we do kubectl describe pod, you can see that we only have one pod available. Okay, so we are getting the information for that pod. So you can see that it has been scheduled first. So in the earlier video we saw that whenever we give the command to the API server, that API server will pass that information to the scheduler, and from that scheduler the information will pass to the nodes, the kubelets. So you can see that it's been scheduled, the information was passed to the scheduler, and from that scheduler you can see that from the information was passed to the kubelet. Minikube is our node, and you can see that the image was successfully pulled the image, and container was created and container was started. So this way you can see that all the steps we saw for the pods. Let me clear it out now. Now suppose you want to change anything in your deployment, right? So to change anything in your deployment, you can use the edit command for the deployment. So suppose you want to change the replica. So for that what you can do is, you can do kubectl edit deployment. Okay, as I have only one deployment, the default deployment will be open over here. Okay, my spelling is wrong. Okay, you can see that this is a deployment file. This deployment file is in YAML format. Okay, so suppose I want to create two replicas now. Okay, so you can see that here replicas are there. We saw that in the replica set we have only one node, one pods available. So if I change this to 2 over here, 2 pods will be created now for my replica set. So you can see that my defined state is 2 now, and the desired state, actually it was 1 earlier when we saw that. Now Kubernetes will define, okay, now the desired state should be 2, so I have to create one extra pod for Kubernetes cluster. So let's save this and close this file, and you can see that the deployment was edited. Now if you see my kubectl get pod, you can see that one extra new pod is created. Okay, you can see that it just started 8 seconds ago. So this way we can edit the deployments as well. So now there is a high chance like something went wrong in your application and you have to debug the application, right? So to debug the application, to check the logs, okay, what you can do is you can use the logs command. Okay, so to check the logs, the command is kubectl logs, and then you have to give the pod name. So you can see that if I want to see the logs for this particular, so I'll just copy this pod name. Okay, when I hit enter, you can see that the logs for this particular pod will be displayed over here. Now from the logs itself, you are not able to identify what's the issue. You want to go inside the pod, inside your container, then you can use the kubectl exec command to go inside your container and see what are the different issues available, or you can debug your containers as well. So the command is kubectl exec to execute, and I'll be in the interactive mode. Okay, so -it, then we need to give the pod name. Okay, so suppose I'm giving this pod name over here, and after that I can give the command, which command I want to fire. Suppose I want to fire the bin command only, bash command. Okay, I'll just give bin -bash. So what will happen is I will be in the interactive mode for this particular container. I'll be inside that container. Okay, so you can see that once I hit enter, I'm in the root of this particular container. If I do ls over here, you can see that we are getting the file system of this particular container. You can see that now from here we can identify if you have any issues. You can go inside this and you can identify the issues, and you can debug the issues as well. So this is how you can directly check the logs, and you can go inside your containers and debug as well. Now to get out of this, you will just use exit command to get out of this. Now when you want to delete your deployments, okay, you don't have to delete your pods, your replica sets or your services which have been created. You can just directly delete your deployment and all the underlying components will be deleted automatically. So this is a very handy feature and it's very useful for the developers that they don't have to worry about all the underlying components. So to delete the deployment, what we'll do is we'll just use kubectl delete deployment and we'll just give deployment name nginx server. Okay, you can see that deployment is deleted, and if I see all the components kubectl get pod, you can see that there is no pods, there is no deployment also available now, and you can see that there will be only one service available, which was Kubernetes service. So we saw how to create, edit and delete the deployments. We also saw how to debug the pods, how to see the logs, how to go inside the containers, and we can execute all the commands there as well. So if you're going with the production application, then to give the commands this way is not efficient way, right? There will be many applications connected to each other. So we can create a configuration files for it and we can directly deploy that configuration file in our Kubernetes cluster. So all this configuration file can be either created using YAML or can be created using JSON. So let's see how we can create a configuration file and how we can deploy that configuration file in our Kubernetes cluster. So in this configuration file, we'll be using our Spring Boot application. I have created one Spring Boot application that will deploy using the configuration file. We already saw how to use a default images available. Now we'll see how to use a custom images that you have created. Okay. So if you go to Docker Hub over here, this is my repository daily code buffer. Inside this, I have created one particular container, one particular image, that is Docker publish. This is the particular image and I have different versions for it, 0.0.3. So I have created a file for it. I have created a configuration file and let's see how that configuration file looks. So this is the configuration file. You can see that I have created a deployment file and the file name is deploy.yml. So I'm creating a YAML file format. Now this deployment, the name of the deployment I have created as myapp deploy and application name I have created as myapp. I have created the labels and specifications I have given over here, that is replica should be 1. So I need to create one replica for it and the selector for it should be myapp. So that means this particular application, this one. You can see the template I have created. In that template I have given the metadata as myapp and for this myapp specification is this one. That container should be having the name as myapp pod. The image should be daily code buffer / docker publish, whatever we gave over here. From here I have took and my container port is 9091. So don't worry if you don't know how to create this YAML file for the configuration of the Kubernetes. I'll create a separate video to explain the configuration of the YAML. So you just understand now, like I have created a deployment configuration file and how to deploy those files. Okay, so I have created this file and I'm using one container over here. So let's see how to deploy it. Okay, so let me go to that particular folder. Okay, first. Okay, I'm inside this particular folder. Now the command to deploy a configuration file for the deployment is kubectl. So when we saw that all the components that we created are using the create command or edit command and the delete command, but here we are applying a configuration file to Kubernetes cluster. So the command will be apply command. We are applying a configuration file and we will give the flag -f and we will give the file name. So my file name is deploy.yaml file. So whatever configuration is available in this deploy.yaml file, it will deploy everything. It will apply all the settings, all the configurations to my Kubernetes cluster. So my deployments will be created, my replica set will be created and my pods will be created, and that pod will contain my image that I have provided that will be running on port 9091. So let's apply this. Okay, you can see that deployment is created. Now let's see the deployments. kubectl get deployment. You can see that myapp deploy is created, which I give over here, right? What is the name of my deployment? That is myapp deploy. kubectl get replica set. So you can see that my replica set is created, which is having desired one, current one and ready one. Okay, because I provided one over here. Now let's see the pods. This is the pod created, myapp deploy, and it's ready. So this way we can create the deployments using the configuration file as well. Now here also we can see the logs, kubectl logs for this particular pod. Okay, I'll get the Spring Boot logs. So you can see that these are my Spring Boot logs that are being printed while starting the application. Okay, you can see that my application started on 9091 port. The same way you can execute the bash command for this particular pod as well, and you can delete the deployment as well. So to delete the deployment, again you will call kubectl delete, and you will provide the file name, that is deploy.yml file. So whatever configurations are available, that will be deleted. Okay, you can see that it has been deleted. So generally the best practices are to create these configuration files and to keep those configurations files within your application itself, within your repository. So this way, if there are any changes in your application, developers can change the configuration file of your containers for your Kubernetes as well. So this way nothing has been missed out and a smooth deployment can be possible. So that's all in this video. These are all the basic commands, basic Kubernetes commands that you can use to create your deployments, to configure your applications, to debug your applications, debug your pods, and all those information. I hope you have liked this video. If you have liked this video, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for the upcoming videos. Please stay tuned for the next video where I will tell you all the details about the YAML configuration file. Till then, happy coding. See ya.